And to tell us what the international desk has for us for the coming week, we're joined by SABC News specialist correspondent Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. Let's start with the SADC meeting that was chaired by President Cyril Ramaphosa then. I recall, of course, Ramaphosa placing a lot of emphasis on peace and development in Madagascar.
Yes, indeed. The intention was to look at the report that was compiled by the team that was sent to Madagascar to speak to stakeholders after the coup. And therefore, that report was presented to heads of state and government. The decision was taken that they appoint elders to look at this issue chaired by the former Malawian President George Banda, and they will do a follow-up to try and assist Madagascar to return to the democratic rule. It will be a process. There were already people who were assisting to bring stakeholders together, and there was a discussion that the debate and the discussion on a dialogue that is aimed at uniting people of Madagascar will start soon. And the meeting emphasized a need for that meeting to get underway.
Yeah. The issue of peace and security on the continent does remain a concern and top of mind. The president of Ghana is now preparing, of course, to take over the chairmanship of the AU Assembly at a time where the conflict is still raging in parts like the eastern part of the DRC and Sudan. So speak to us about that important role.
It is quite an important role because you know that conflict is still raging on in the DRC and in Sudan. And therefore, the President of Ghana, who will be the chair, will have to ensure that there's a solution to the current conflict in the DRC, including the situation, a dire humanitarian crisis in Sudan. And with his experience as someone who was a leader in Ghana and have been to many AU meetings and have worked with sharp minds during his tenure, we know that this is the second time he's making a comeback. He can use that experience and knowledge to try and find a solution to these challenges. We know that this week the envoy of President Felix Tshisekedi was in South Africa to consult with President Ramaphosa. We haven't had the outcome of those consultations yet, but we also saw him going to other countries as well. And you can see that the situation in the DRC is not looking good, and therefore the war is still raging on. M23 is continuing to capture some areas, even though there was a retreat on Friday, but the area that they have captured is in the eastern part of the DRC. It's quite critical. That's where you find most of the rare earth minerals, and we saw the U.S. weighing in. And therefore, it will be a difficult task, but I think President Mahama, with his experience, I have seen him working in Kenya during elections where the person who didn't win contested or protested, and they were able to bring all stakeholders together with the former South African president. They were both leading missions there, and their involvement in persuading the stakeholders to find a better solution. I think it is that kind of a skill that he has that will come handy. And him even citing example that at some point in time he lost elections and then he did accept, but he's back again. So I think he's the right person to be also an example of understanding that elections are not supposed to be about life and death.
You reference the United States of America. The US Senate has approved the nomination of US Ambassador-designate to South Africa, Brent Bozell. It does come, Sophie, at a time when tensions between the US and South Africa are still a concern. So what can we expect then on this front? What can you tell us?
Well, I got information when we were at the ANC and GC, some people were saying that he is expected to arrive in January. So it will be interesting to see, because he is still ambassador-designate, because he has to present his credentials to President Ramaphosa. And therefore, we don't know when will that happen. He cannot be an ambassador. He can't talk. He can't start working and engaging until he presents his credentials, which I think might take a bit of time. But also, at the same time, it will be of interest to see whether South Africa will also move with speed to appoint an ambassador to the U.S. We know that the president has been dealing with this matter. And because it is the president's prerogative to appoint a diplomat, we are hoping that next year maybe an announcement will be made. But on the side of the Americans, yes, indeed, he gets a nod from the Senate. Even though there were divisions, the Democrats didn't support his name because he's a right wing. He's a heavy right wing. And people are saying he's just going to stoke tension, because we see the right wing members in South Africa are very, very emboldened. And the fear is that he is going to give them even more leeway. But it's not as easy as all that, because when you are a diplomat, you have to respect the rules and the laws of that particular country where you are posted. And therefore, it will be interesting to see how he's going to navigate this. But also, he will get a first-hand information and experience that you have the black majority who are still struggling in this country, who are still vulnerable. You talk about crime, 10 people killed, black people. The last time it was a tavern in Pretoria who were killed, black people. And therefore, the black majority being vulnerable as it relates to crime, poverty, and exclusion in the activities of the economy. Many young black people are not employed. This is the situation in this country. Therefore, the misinformation that the laws that are aimed at redressing the imbalances of the past are racist laws. He will have a first-hand information to see how the black majority who were oppressed are still struggling and trying to survive, and therefore even being impatient, because for 30 years a lot has been done, but a lot still needs to be done. When you look at the struggle of the black majority that was excluded, that is still struggling to find seats.
You raise some very critical points, Sophie, and I'll tell you what, something that South Africa does not need at this time is disinformation, which further divides the nation. But Sophie, you're also monitoring conflicts in Eastern Europe. I mean, there is no agreement, as we know, between Ukraine and Russia to end the war. And some South Africans, of course, still trapped in a war zone in Donbas. What can you tell us here?
They are still there. We know that it's very difficult to help them to leave that area because fighting has intensified. It's winter time, it's cold, and fears are that they will be suffering. And the government is still negotiating with the relevant people. The problem here, yes, they might have been there because they were lured there in false pretense, and little did they know they were going to fight side by side with the Russian military to fight Ukraine. And now they are trapped there. It's going to be very difficult to access them or to be able to evacuate them. We are told diplomatic engagements are continuing, but the technicality is when you get trapped in a war zone, it's not easy to be evacuated. It's not like being trapped in a country, you lost your ID and therefore your passport, you want assistance, or you were there, you're looking for a job, you can't find it. It's easy to help you. The embassy can help you. But in this case, they are trapped in a war zone. It is Russia and Ukraine. It's not even internal conflict in Ukraine or in Russia. It is a country fighting with another country. It is a war zone, and it's not going to be easy to bring them back.
Absolutely. Sophie, it's going to be a hectic week for you. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, they say news doesn't end. That was SABC News Specialist Correspondent Sophie Mokoena, just painting a picture in terms of some of the news that she is going to be tracking over the next week. All right, we're going to